active during arguably the greatest heavyweight era of all time. Ron Lyle took Muhammad Ali to 11 rounds left. The much-avoided Ernie Shavers flat on his face, and hit George Foreman so hard that Foreman later reported, "It didn't even hurt." But although celebrated in his day for fearsome punching power, an all-action style and absolute fearlessness in the ring, Lyle's destiny had once seemed much darker and more desperate. Before reaching 20, he received a lengthy prison sentence, and while serving time he came within a few breaths of dying. He sought redemption through boxing, eventually going on to meet some of the sport's greatest names in the ring. And this is the unlikely story of how Ron Lyle went from condemned inmate to boxing legend. Coming from the era of Muhammad Ali, George Foreman, and Joe Frazier, you might be less familiar with the name Ron Lyle, but if you're a fan of boxing, it's a name you should know. After being sentenced 15 to 25 years, when just 19, the trajectory of Ron Lyle's life seemed set. Convicted of second-degree murder. In a gang-related shooting, he faced the prospect of spending the best years of his life behind bars. George didn't improve once inside, and he was soon fighting for his life, after a statin left him needing no fewer than 36 blood transfusions. Technically, he died twice on the operating table before a determined doctor managed to save him, and so close had he been to the end that his death certificate was already signed prematurely. As it turned out, he always maintained his innocence for this murder, but later in life, he was once again accused of killing a man. Where he went, controversy and sometimes violence seemed to follow, but those who knew him told a different story. He was a tough man, they said, who would never back down, but he was never one to pick a fight, and he had a kind heart. He also possessed an unbreakable determination, and it was this quality above all that saw him cheat death in prison before going on to challenge some of the most famous names in heavyweight boxing history. Born in Dayton, Ohio, Lyle moved to Denver, Colorado when he was 4. His father was a preacher, and Lyle, the third of 19 siblings, had religion instilled into him from a young age. However, growing up in a rough area, he mixed with the wrong crowd and soon found himself involved with gangs. As a teenager, he spent time in Buena Vista Correctional Facility for his part in a burglary. And then, after his release, a 21-year-old rival gang member was shot dead, and Lyle was sent to prison for his murder. Lyle protested his innocence, saying he was attacked with a lead pipe and hadn't been the one to pull the trigger. But through loyalty to his friends, he never told the police who was responsible, choosing to do time instead. Before prison, Lyle had never boxed, but he began to take an interest through watching prison bouts. Perhaps due to his natural athleticism and innate toughness, he soon began to think it was something he would be good at too. However, when prison athletic director Lieutenant Cliff Vitax encouraged him to try, he resisted, telling him, "Man, you're a screw and I'm a convict. I came here by myself, and I'll leave the same way." But fate was about to intervene, and as Lyle said himself, God had other plans. During a fight with another inmate, Lyle was stabbed in the abdomen, losing huge amounts of blood, but showing the force of will that would later stand him in good stead in the ring. Against all odds, he survived. After recovering from his wound, he was sent to solitary confinement, where he received just 1 bowl of spinach each day. In such circumstances, you might imagine he spent most of his time feeling sorry for himself in licking his wounds, but that wasn't his style. Instead, he began trading his body. Famously, he worked up to doing 1,000 push-ups in an hour, and determined to follow Metaxas' suggestion by making something of himself as a boxer. On being released from the hole, as solitary confinement was known, he began his boxing education. He was defeated in his first fight, but he never lost a prison bout again, amassing an estimated 23 wins and a probable prison record of 23-1, which was his prowess inside the ring that the prison began bringing fighters in from the outside to challenge him. And it wasn't long before his increasingly impressive record brought him to the attention of Bill Daniels, the owner of a local boxing team. At this time, Lyle was up for parole but was rejected twice, on the grounds that professional boxing wasn't a credible career plan. To solve this, Daniels secured Lyle work as a welder so he could join his team, and Lyle walked free after serving just 7.5 years of his sentence. On the outside, Lyle quickly embarked upon a short but successful amateur career. He won several championships and became the first American to beat a Soviet heavyweight with a win over Armenian Kamo Saroyan. He also defeated fellow American Dwayne Bobick, and with this victory, Lyle looked set to represent the U.S. at the 1972 Munich Olympics. But instead, he elected to turn pro with Bobick being sent in his place. By now, Lyle was already 30 years old, so you can understand his decision to skip the Olympics in favor of the more lucrative professional scene. But even at this age, with a post-prison amateur record of 25-4 with 17 knockouts, he was still touted as a promising talent. On turning pro, Lyle raced to a record of 19-0, including 17 knockouts, before a first tasting defeat against Jerry Query. In that fight, Query used superior skills and movement to outbox Lyle over 12 rounds en route to a clear points victory. After a subsequent string of wins, he lost again to Jimmy Young, but ironically, his lost Query may have helped set up one of the most memorable nights of Lyle's career, when he was given the call to face Muhammad Ali. Now, in his second stint as champ, Ali may have noted how Lyle was easily defeated by a skilled boxer, and thought Lyle would make an easy night's work. Lyle obviously hadn't read that script, though, and pushed Ali all the way through 10 rounds, before Ali finally caught him and finished the night by TKO in the 11th. Lyle later said he wanted the fight to continue so he could go out on his back. At the time of the stoppage, he had been up on all 3 scorecards, but with Ali's rumble in the jungle, with George Foreman already signed, Lyle believed boxing politics had robbed him of his chance to become champion. He never got a second shot. Lyle faced the formidable Ernie Shavers, the man many considered to be the biggest puncher in heavyweight history. Neither Joe Frazier nor George Foreman ever stepped into the ring with Shavers, but Lyle didn't hesitate. In the resulting contest between 2 huge punchers lasted a brutal 6 rounds before the inevitable knockout came. In the second, Shavers backed Lyle into a corner and hit him with a flush-left hook that sent Lyle slumping to the floor. However, having taken a clean shot from one of the most feared punchers ever to have laced up a pair of gloves, Lyle showed characteristic grit to stand up and continue. With Lyle on unsteady legs, and Shavers looking to finish the bell, sounded the end of the round, and Lyle returned to his corner to recover. The fight then ebbed and flowed until Lyle was able to catch his man in the 6th, unleashing a barrage of blows that sent his opponent sprawling unconscious to the canvas. If you're used to modern boxing, where the ref jumps in to stop a fighter taking too much punishment, you'll be watching the beating Lyle administers to Shavers through your fingers. Boxers in those days were a different breed. Arguably, Lyle's most unforgettable night, however, was when he challenged George Foreman, another formidable puncher, the following year. The ensuing slugfest won Ring Magazine's Fight of the Year, and the fourth round, which saw Lyle hit the canvas once and Foreman knocked down twice, was named Round of the Year. In the fifth, with both men barely able to stand, and Lyle, looking for the knockout, Foreman somehow managed to push Lyle onto the ropes and unloaded, finishing the bout in spiteful fashion. Despite the loss, this fight cemented Lyle's reputation for bravery with you. Include him in conversations about the greatest boxers never to win a world title. In any other era, Lyle would surely have been crowned heavyweight champion at some point in his career. During this loss, Lyle fought on until 1980, picking up several wins and a couple of losses, including a shock second-round KO to the unheralded Lynn Ball that effectively ended his hopes of ever challenging for a title again. During this period, he was accused of shooting dead his former aide Vernon Clark, but was acquitted, deemed to have acted in self-defense after a disagreement over money. This time, though he was unquestionably the one who pulled the trigger, inspired by Foreman's famous comeback. Lyle returned to the ring aged 54, but after beating 4 club-level boxers, he finally hung up the gloves for good. Even at this age, he was still the kind of boxer you wouldn't want to get in the ring with unless you could really handle yourself. Lyle spent his later years giving back to the community and training young boxers, notably working with Victor Ortiz, who went on to capture the WBC welterweight title. Lyle never forgot his religious roots, saying that even later in life he felt guilty if he missed church 2 Sundays in a row. He was aware of the pain he had caused his devout mother, and his ultimately unsuccessful quest to become heavyweight champion was in part driven by the desire to atone for his mistakes and make his mother proud. Rob Mile died suddenly at 70 due to a stomach issue. Those who knew him recall a loyal friend who always had the back of those closest to him. To boxing fans, he is remembered for his magnificent duels against Ali Shavers and Foreman, and is revered as a cold hero who punched hard, feared no opponent, and always left everything in the ring and never took a step back, no matter who was standing in the opposite corner. Music.